There were 26 chairs at that dinner. I remember counting them because I wasn't supposed to be in any of them. The moment I sat down, I saw it. The flicker of panic in her eyes. Just for a second. Like she didn't expect me to actually show. Camille said the invite was a formality. No pressure, she whispered earlier that afternoon, as she buttoned her blouse and avoided eye contact. If you're tired, you really don't have to come. I came anyway. Harborview Club was the kind of place where valet drivers wear gloves and the air smells like old money and judgment. The chandeliers had names, apparently. Ours hung over table 5. I wasn't supposed to be in chair 14. That was his seat. I found out later. The dinner was for Harvey, her boss. A milestone celebration, she called it. His company hit some absurd number. I never cared much for those parties, but she wanted me to make an appearance. Except I appeared too long. I stayed. She spent the entire evening pretending I was invisible. I'm not exaggerating. People would ask, "Who's this?" And she'd say, "Oh, that's Emmett." Like I was her cousin visiting from some boring town. Not my husband. Not even my +1. Just Emmett. Half the time she didn't even say that. She'd just smile and turn back to the conversation. I must have refilled my own glass 6 times just to stay seated. But then came the moment. The moment that finally made me push my chair back, the chair I wasn't supposed to be in, and leave. It was subtle. Most wouldn't have noticed it. But I did. Camille was standing close to Harvey. Too close. Their hands brushed once, then again. Then she laughed. Not a polite laugh, but the one she reserves for people who make her heart beat faster. And he tucked a stray piece of her hair behind her ear. That broke something inside me. Not because of the gesture, but because of her reaction. She didn't flinch, didn't step back. She smiled, like she'd been waiting for him to do it. I stood. She didn't notice. I left my jacket. Still nothing. It wasn't until I crossed the gravel driveway outside the club that my phone buzzed. Camille. Wait, where did you go? 5 minutes. It took her 5 minutes after I vanished to realize I was gone. But here's the part that still guts me. As I looked back at the window, there was someone sitting in chair 14. My chair. A man I'd never seen before. Smiling, with his arm draped casually over the back of her seat. I spent most of the drive home adjusting the rearview mirror. Not because I needed to see behind me. There was nothing to look at, but because I couldn't stop staring at myself. I didn't recognize the man staring back. He looked smaller, like the suit was too big for him now. I paid for tailoring. I remembered doing that. But somehow, the shoulder seams were drooping, and the collar didn't sit right. Like the fabric had learned who I was before I did. I didn't cry. I'm not that poetic. But my hands were sweating so much I had to drive with a napkin between my palm and the steering wheel. The valet had handed it to me as I left, smiling like I was just another satisfied guest calling it an early night. I wanted to scream. Instead, I drove. The house was too quiet when I walked in. That kind of silence where you realize how loud your hopes used to be. I tossed my keys onto the counter, and for a split second, I almost texted her, "Hey, I'm home." But that felt ridiculous. Why should I have to tell her anything? Still, I waited. Not because I expected her to come home early, but because I wanted to believe she might. That she'd burst through the door, breathless, saying she realized something. That she missed me. That she felt sick not having me beside her. That she noticed I was gone right away and panicked. But 5 minutes turned into 20. 20 into an hour. Then something strange happened. Her tablet pinged. We don't use the same devices much. But I'd logged in once to send a birthday gift from her Amazon account last year, and I guess the sync never turned off. Her messages were rolling through like raindrops on glass. I swear I didn't mean to snoop. But the screen lit up again, and one name kept repeating. Harvey Linford. Her boss. The silver-haired ego with a yacht-sized smile, and an executive assistant who follows him like a shadow. At first, the messages were professional. Great job with the speech. You looked stunning tonight. Thanks for handling the investor crowd. But then things bent sideways. Next time, don't bring your husband. I froze. The timestamp? Exactly 6 minutes after I left the party. I scrolled. My thumb trembled so much I nearly dropped the tablet. Another message followed, from her. I didn't think he'd come. And then, he wasn't even supposed to sit there. That's when I realized something that made my stomach turn. The chair. The one I sat in. The one that felt off all night. The one that had a wine glass already half filled when I arrived at the table. It wasn't mine. It wasn't ever meant to be. He had a place waiting for him. Not me. I couldn't stop looking at the messages. I couldn't stop reading between the lines. The way they spoke, carefully, coded, but unmistakably intimate. There were inside jokes, references to things I'd never heard about. Phrases like, "You owe me another rooftop moment," winky face, and "Still thinking about that Nashville hotel." I didn't know she'd been to Nashville last month. She said it was a company offsite. Suddenly, the whole trip snapped into place. She brought back bourbon for me, a souvenir. I remember thinking it was sweet. But now I realized that bottle was a distraction, a decoy, and I drank it like a fool. I sat there in the dark, tablet glowing in my lap, and felt a part of me dissolve. I wasn't angry yet. That came later. Right now, I just felt stupid. Like the kind of stupid that doesn't just sting, it hollows you out from the inside. But I wasn't done. Because right as I locked the screen and set the tablet down, the door opened, and she walked in, heels in hand, hair still perfect, eyes wide like she was the one surprised. "Why are you up?" she asked. And I smiled, too wide, too calm, and replied, "I'm just sitting in the wrong chair again." Her face went pale, but she still had no idea how much I knew. Not yet. She stood in the doorway longer than necessary. That pause, the delay between removing her shoes and speaking again, wasn't guilt. It was calculation. She was trying to measure me, to see if the temperature in the room had changed. It had, but I smiled anyway. I don't know why. Maybe because I wanted to see how far she'd go. Maybe because part of me still wanted to believe that she'd crack, that something real might fall out. Camille walked into the kitchen barefoot, quietly, like she didn't want to wake up a truth that was already sitting between us. "You're acting weird," she said, pouring herself water like she hadn't just come from a ballroom filled with lies. "Did something happen at the dinner?" I stared at her. She didn't look messy or flustered. Her lipstick was slightly faded, sure, but otherwise, flawless. The same Camille I married. The same Camille who could lie through her teeth and still convince the priest she'd never sinned. She leaned on the counter, sipped. "You left early. You noticed?" She tilted her head like I was the one being dramatic. Of course I noticed. I just didn't want to cause a scene. You know how important tonight was. That was her game. Flip the script. Make it about optics. About me being the one who disrupted the narrative. I figured I wasn't needed, I said, watching her face closely. She didn't flinch. "You were. But you know how it is. Networking. Schmoozing. You hate those things." Another twist of the knife. She wasn't denying what happened. She was just reframing it, suggesting I should have known better than to come. That's when I pulled out the tablet and slid it across the table. She blinked. Didn't touch it. Just stared at the dark screen like it might explode. "What's this?" "Open it." Nothing moved for a moment. Just her breathing, soft and slow. Then, finally, she tapped the power button. The screen lit up directly into the messages. Harvey's name at the top. The most recent message still unread. "Hope the drive home wasn't awkward," winky face. Her jaw tightened. "I didn't mean for you to see that," she said. It's not what it looks like. Let me explain. Just that. Like the only real sin was me stumbling into her private little performance. "You didn't think I'd be there, did you?" I asked. "No. Honest. Too honest." I could hear the fatigue in her voice now. Not sorrow. Not remorse. Just the tired sigh of someone who got caught off script. She sat down slowly, as if rehearsing. "I wasn't trying to hurt you." My laugh came out dry, ugly. "Did it happen in Nashville?" She didn't answer, but her silence filled the room like a fire alarm. I waited. I wanted the truth to come out of her mouth. I didn't want to rely on Harvey's winks or calendar entries. I wanted her to say it. Finally, she nodded once. It was a mistake. Another rehearsed line. Another neutral phrase, softened to sound digestible. How many times? She opened her mouth, closed it, thought about lying. Then, finally, whispered, "Twice." I stared at her, at the woman I swore I knew, and I felt something unexpected rise inside me. Not rage, not even betrayal. Something worse. Clarity. I saw everything. The forced smiles. The sudden business trips. The way she'd started locking her phone when she never used to. All of it. A pattern I refused to notice while it was still fixable. Camille tried reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "You said you wanted me there tonight," I said, voice low. "But you never planned for me to stay. That chair was for him, wasn't it?" She looked away. That was all I needed. I stood. She stood too. "Emmett, wait. Please don't." "Don't what?" I said. Don't act like the husband you forgot existed. She started to cry then. I wish I could say it moved me, that I felt something soften. But all I could think about were those damn chairs. He was supposed to sit next to her. He was supposed to toast her under the chandelier. He was supposed to be in the pictures, not me. And somehow, she still called it a mistake. As I walked toward the bedroom, she called after me. Can we please talk about this tomorrow? When we've both calmed down. I stopped, turned, and with the coldest voice I've ever used in my life, I said, there won't be a tomorrow, Camille. Not with me in it. Then I shut the door. Behind it, I sat in the dark again, alone with nothing but the sound of her crying and the terrible knowledge that I wasn't angry enough. Not yet, but I would be. The first thing I noticed when I woke up wasn't the sunlight or the silence. It was the absence. Her side of the bed was cold. The kind of cold that tells you it hadn't been used all night. I hadn't heard the couch creak, hadn't heard the shower run, hadn't heard her, but her car was still outside. And the only thing I could smell was coffee. That's when I found the note. Not handwritten, not folded with regret, just a sticky note, yellow, crooked, slapped on the coffee maker like a punchline. Didn't want to wake you. Taking a walk. We'll talk later. No heart. No love you. Not even my name. That's when I realized she was giving me the same courtesy she gives strangers at hotel checkouts. I sat there in my own kitchen, still in my wrinkled shirt from the night before, and I stared at that little note for almost 30 minutes. I didn't drink the coffee. I didn't move. I just existed. Barely. At 9:41 a.m., her phone buzzed on the counter. She'd left it. Accidentally or on purpose, I don't know. But it was there, face down, glowing like something radioactive. I shouldn't have picked it up. I know that. But you don't just ignore a ticking bomb in your kitchen. No password. She hadn't changed it. Or maybe she wanted me to look. Maybe she needed me to see. I opened her messages. It wasn't just Harvey. It was Sean. Darren. One name saved as L.I.'s. Another saved under just an emoji, airplane departure. I wasn't looking at a one-time mistake. I was looking at a rotation. A catalog. And then I found the folder in her photos. Hidden. Buried under an innocuous album name. Invoices. Inside were screenshots. Dozens. Conversations, selfies, plane tickets. Hotel keys. One photo of her in a bathroom mirror, wearing the dress she wore to our anniversary dinner last year. But the caption was to someone else. Wish you were here instead. I felt nauseous. I think I actually said no out loud, like I could undo the image by rejecting it. But it was real. Every part of it. There were timestamps going back over 14 months. 14 months of secrets. 14 months of her playing the long game. 14 months of me being the idiot who made her coffee every morning while she packed work shoes for someone else's bedroom floor. And then, I found the voice note. From Harvey. 2 weeks ago. I know you're trying to manage it, Cam, but he's holding you back. People notice. They talk. This can't keep being about him. You're past that. 30 seconds of casual sabotage. Like I was a speed bump in their road. That was the moment something flipped. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. But something cracked silently in my chest, like glass under pressure. She came back an hour later. Sunglasses on. No apology in her step. Just a half smile and an "oh, you're up." I was still at the counter. Still holding the phone. She saw it. Her face didn't crumble. She didn't break down. She exhaled. Like she'd been waiting for this shoe to drop. Like she was relieved. I was going to tell you, she said. But she wasn't. And we both knew it. You had a whole folder, I whispered. A damn folder. She pulled out a chair, like this was going to be a civilized talk. You don't understand what I've been dealing with. What I've sacrificed. What I needed. My laugh was ugly. What you needed. Was this a prescription? Was I your pharmacist? You've been distant. That was the bullet. That's the line they all rehearse. You've been distant. You weren't there. You didn't see me. I stood. You were never alone, Camille. You were just bored. And I was dumb enough to think loyalty was still a thing in this house. She didn't fight me. She didn't beg. She just sat there, letting me unload, like she was the victim of my monologue. And then, when I finally stopped pacing, when I finally looked at her to see anything human left behind those calm, contemptuous eyes, she asked, "So what now?" No fear. Just negotiation. She was already trying to figure out who would keep the apartment, who would call the lawyer, who would spin the story first. But she had no idea. None. Because I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to pack my bags. I was going to stay. And I was going to make her think everything was normal. Because people like Camille, they only break when they think they've won. 3 nights later, I made her favorite meal. Not because I forgave her. Not because I wanted her back. And definitely not because I was hungry. I did it because I wanted to watch her eat it. Pasta alla vodka with seared shrimp, garlic bread, and a bottle of white wine she'd been saving for something special. I set the table, folded the napkins, even lit candles like we were reenacting a life I wasn't part of anymore. It was all theater. Camille walked in from work like nothing had happened. That had become her thing lately, pretending that this house wasn't burning at the foundation. She complimented the smell, kissed me on the cheek without making contact, and dropped her purse by the door like she hadn't detonated our marriage with her thumb. She sat down, took a bite. "You haven't cooked in a while," she said. I shrugged. Felt like it. And then I just watched. I watched her twirl the pasta. I watched her bite down on the bread like she wasn't the villain in this play. I watched her moan slightly, just a little, as she tasted the wine. She still had no idea what was coming. Because Camille is the kind of woman who only looks forward. She doesn't believe in consequences. She thinks stories end when she walks out of the room. So I made sure she stayed in this one. I cleared the dishes. She offered to help, but I declined. I even told her to go shower, relax, unwind. I could see in her eyes that she thought we were healing. That maybe the storm had passed. That maybe Emmett was still the idiot who'd rather fix a crack in the wall than ask what caused the damage in the first place. She had no idea I'd spent my lunch breaks contacting her coworkers. Quietly, anonymously. I started with a burner number and a carefully worded message to one of the junior associates she mentored. "Are you comfortable with how Harvey treats women in the office?" That was it. No accusations. Just a question. It spread like gasoline. By the next afternoon, 3 more employees had responded. One even asked, "Is this about Camille?" Another mentioned a hotel receipt she'd seen on the company's shared expense folder, but was too afraid to report. Harvey's name was all over it. Camille's initials, too. I didn't have to expose her. I just had to open the door and let the rot spill out on its own. While she dried her hair that night, I copied every message from her phone to a flash drive. Photos, voice notes, GPS data, screenshots. I even synced her calendar to a private account. I wasn't collecting evidence for court, not yet. I was collecting patterns. Because the thing about people like Camille, they don't just cheat on their spouses. They cheat on their rules, on their companies, on their timelines. She was sloppy, arrogant, and more than anything, she assumed I was too weak to weaponize what I knew. I waited. The next day, she called me during lunch. Her voice was sweet again. "Just wanted to say thanks for dinner last night. It meant a lot." I told her, of course. And I meant it. It did mean a lot. Because now I knew her rhythm. I knew when she felt safe. I knew what comfort looked like on her face. And I knew how to take it away. But the most important piece of the puzzle came the following morning. I was taking out the trash when a man pulled into our driveway. Black car, press collar, sunglasses. I didn't recognize him at first. He stepped out, paused. "Is Camille home?" I hesitated. "She's in the shower." He nodded, like he expected that. Then he said something that changed everything. "Can you just tell her Mark stopped by?" I didn't blink. I didn't answer. I just watched him walk back to his car like that was the most normal request in the world. His license plate was custom. Linford 1. Harvey. Using his first name like it was casual. She'd brought him here. She'd crossed that line. And now, I wasn't just betrayed. I was humiliated. And that's when the plan stopped being quiet. Because if she was going to bring the war to my house, then I was going to bury her in the rubble. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of anger. Not even because of what I saw. But because of the man I became after I saw it. There's something that changes in you when another man shows up to your home, calls your wife by her first name, and doesn't flinch. He didn't ask if she was home. He assumed. Like he had every right to be there. Like I was the butler. I lay in bed next to her afterward. Her breath steady. Her body warm beneath the covers. And I imagined what it must feel like to live in a story where I didn't matter. Where the house, the ring, the dinners, the vacations, were all just a set she used to rehearse being faithful. That morning, she hummed while brushing her hair. Hummed. The same woman who begged me not to make a scene just 4 nights ago, now floated around the bedroom like she'd been rebaptized in clean guilt. She even kissed me on the temple. The first time she'd done that in weeks. "Meeting with investors this afternoon," she said. "Might be home late." She didn't ask how I was. She didn't notice the look in my eyes. I nodded. And once she left, I got to work. I had no master plan. No movie-worthy scheme. Just one goal: flip the mirror. Let her see herself for what she was. The first thing I did was call her mother. That sounds stupid, right? But it mattered. Her mom, Nancy, adored me. Always did. She believed we were the last traditional couple in our friend circle. She once told Camille during a Christmas brunch that she'd better keep this one right in front of me. Camille laughed and squeezed my knee under the table. I hadn't spoken to Nancy in months. Not since the Nashville trip. She answered on the second ring. Pleasant, cheerful, oblivious. I didn't start with accusations. I started with concern. Has Camille seemed different lately? I asked. Like distracted? Nancy paused. She hasn't said much. Why? Did something happen? That pause, that little crack, it told me everything. Nancy knew something. Maybe not the whole truth, but enough to feel unease. I didn't even have to push. Just hinted. She's been working late a lot. Going on trips I didn't know about. I'm just worried. Oh honey, Nancy sighed. That's not good. You two are solid, right? I thought so. She didn't ask more. But I knew she would. Parents always do. And Camille hated that. She hated when her image wasn't fully in her control. After that, I called one more person. My brother, Julian. He and Camille never really clicked. She called him chaotic. I called him honest. He was the one person who saw through her from the beginning. He picked up immediately. Wow, he said. Dead wife walking. Don't joke. I'm not. I've been waiting 3 years for this call. What happened? I told him everything. Not dramatically. Just the facts. He listened in silence. Then he said something I'll never forget. You're not going to beat her by catching her. She wants you to explode. You need to be quiet. You need to let her think she's still safe. And that stuck with me. Let her think she's still safe. So that night, I did something she didn't expect. I surprised her at her office. I showed up at 6:42 p.m. with her favorite takeout, acting like the doting husband. She looked startled when I walked in. Mascara a little smeared, blouse half tucked, her phone face down on her desk. Thought I'd bring you dinner. I smiled. She looked at me for a long second, then exhaled and kissed my cheek. That's really sweet, Emmett. I watched her closely. Her eyes darted to the door. She was checking to see who else had seen me. Who might ask questions? She was calculating the risk. I handed her the bag. I figured you might be hungry. I remember you said you skipped lunch. That's when her phone buzzed. Just once. She didn't reach for it. But her eyes, they flicked toward it like a telling poker. I didn't say anything. I just sat across from her, watched her open the container, watched her pretend this was normal. And I knew, right then, she wasn't eating because she was hungry. She was eating because she was nervous. Because I wasn't supposed to be this calm. And people like Camille, they don't fear yelling. They don't fear threats. They fear the question that never gets asked. The silence that lasts too long. The moment the predictable man they ignored suddenly stops acting predictable. As we sat there, the silence between us said more than either of us dared to. And that was just the beginning. Because while she sipped her drink and acted like she still owned the narrative, I was already 2 steps ahead. She just didn't know that I'd sent Harvey a little gift that morning. A manila envelope. No return address. Inside, a USB, and a note that simply said, check your calendar against hers. Carefully. Camille was still asleep when the email hit her inbox. Timestamp, 7:03 a.m. Subject line, Thursday board follow-up. Attachment, confidential_reimbursement audit. PDF. She didn't know it yet, but her life had begun shrinking in that exact moment. I didn't send the email. I didn't have to, because someone else had. Someone inside Harvey's company who finally decided they'd had enough of the rumors, of the favoritism, of the expense reports that didn't match. All they needed was a spark, and my envelope provided that. Inside the PDF were 6 flagged reimbursements. Hotel stays that overlapped with team retreats, Uber receipts from cities she was never scheduled to be in, and one very specific charge. A spa day for 2 in Nashville, booked under Harvey's corporate account and billed to client development. The document was brutal in its tone. Polite, professional, but damning. It didn't accuse. It just asked questions. And questions are the one thing people like Camille can't afford. When she woke up, I was already dressed. Shirt ironed, laptop bag packed, breakfast on the table. Just like old times. She smiled groggily, sat down, and reached for her phone. I watched her face while she scrolled. Her jaw didn't clench. Her eyebrows didn't twitch. But something in her pupils dilated. She set the phone down gently. Too gently. "You heading into the office early?" she asked. "Big day," I said. She nodded. She didn't ask anything else. That's how I knew. Camille only asked questions when she was still in control. I left the house by 7:45. Waited down the block. She was out by 8:09. No makeup. Hair still damp. She didn't go to work. She drove straight to the coffee shop across from Harvey's building. Parked. Waited. And I waited too. I didn't need binoculars. I knew the look. I'd seen it in the mirror months ago. Someone bracing for a conversation that could alter the direction of their life. At 8:31, Harvey walked out. Alone. No assistant. Just a phone pressed to his ear and a storm cloud over his face. He didn't see her. Didn't slow down. Camille got out of the car. Called after him. He turned. They spoke for 2 minutes. That's all. She gestured with her hands. Pleading. He barely moved. Just kept shaking his head like a man reading off a list of risks. Then he walked off. And she stood there, frozen in the middle of the sidewalk, holding a cup she hadn't even sipped from yet. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt cold. This was the part no one warns you about, the numbness that follows the hit. When you finally land the punch and realize your hands are still shaking. I drove off before she saw me. Let her soak in it alone. That night, she didn't come home until after 10. I was on the couch pretending to read. She walked in quietly, heels in her hand, like the floorboards might judge her. No, sorry I'm late. No, crazy day at work. Just silence. She sat across from me, folded her hands, and looked like a student waiting for detention to begin. You sent something, didn't you? She asked softly. I didn't answer. She tried again. To Harvey. Still nothing. Her voice cracked, just a little. He's not speaking to me. The board called him in this morning. There's going to be a review. I looked up. That must be tough. She blinked. Her lips parted like she was about to spit something ugly, but nothing came out. Because the truth was already in the room. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I just watched her fall apart quietly, the way powerful people do when they realize their stage has collapsed. You've always been like this, she said finally. You act quiet, but underneath it all, you're just vindictive. I closed my book. No, Camille. I'm not vindictive. I'm just not blind anymore. She didn't reply. She just stood and walked into the bedroom without another word. I sat there in that silence, knowing something irreversible had just happened. Not just the fallout, not just the exposure, but the shift. She no longer saw me as harmless. She saw me as a man who could ruin her. And that was the first moment in years where I finally felt like I existed again. But I wasn't done. Because what Camille didn't know was that while her job crumbled, something else was already in motion. Something far more personal. And it would hit her where she kept all her secrets. Camille didn't speak to me for 3 days. No screaming. No blaming. No tears. Just silence. The kind that drips off walls and pools around your feet like something alive. She stopped cooking. She stopped asking where I was going. She stopped pretending. And honestly, I was fine with that. Because for the first time in years, I could hear myself think. On the 4th day, she handed me an envelope. No stamp. No label. Inside was a list, not typed, handwritten. Camille's handwriting was always neat, like someone preparing a legal document. The paper had 12 items. I've taken my things from the upstairs closet. I've canceled the joint credit card. I've removed my name from the utility account. I'll stay at a hotel until I figure out what comes next. I won't dispute the car. It's yours. I left you the passwords to the streaming services. I'm not proud of what I did. I don't expect you to forgive me. Harvey is resigning. I may lose my job. I know I've already lost you. I hope one day you'll feel lighter. That last line. That one broke something in me. Not out of sympathy. Not out of longing. But because it was the first time Camille ever acknowledged that I'd been carrying weight. Not just as her husband. As a ghost in our own home. She walked out without a suitcase. Just a leather tote bag and her coat. No dramatic exit. No begging. Just a woman slowly exiting a life she destroyed. And I let her go. No final words. No farewell kiss. Just the creak of the door and the silence that followed it. And in that silence, I smiled. Because it wasn't empty anymore. It was mine. In the weeks that followed, something strange happened. I started sleeping again. Not scrolling. Till 2 a.m. sleep. Real sleep. The kind where you don't wake up needing to check who she's texting. The kind where your chest doesn't feel like it's bracing for a bomb every time she walks in the room. I put the wedding photos away, not out of bitterness, just to give the walls some fresh air. I bought new sheets, gave the living room a fresh coat of paint, donated all the wine glasses we never used. And one Saturday afternoon, I did something ridiculous. I took a pottery class. Don't ask me why. Maybe I wanted to make something from mud, something breakable that I could shape with my own hands. I met people, real people, a retired electrician named Henry, a woman named Rochelle who made clay cats. Nobody asked what I did or who I used to be to someone else. They only knew me as Emmett, and that was enough. One day, my brother Julian visited. He looked around the apartment and blinked. "Dude," he said, "this place finally feels like you." And for the first time in what felt like a century, I believed him. 6 months later, I received a letter. Handwritten. Camille. She was working in another city now. Different industry. Said she needed a reset. She'd started therapy. She didn't ask for anything, not even forgiveness. She just wanted me to know she'd found a bit of clarity. I didn't respond. Not out of spite, but because she was right in that final line. "I hope one day you'll feel lighter." And I did. Not because she left, but because I stopped chasing the version of her I thought I married. I forgave myself for staying too long, for doubting my instincts, for shrinking just to make room for her chaos. I moved on. And in that moving on, I found something better than revenge. I found peace.